Good morning, dear participants. I think you can hear me and you can see the presentation well. Today, we're gonna talk about the last dimension of the statistical framework. If you remember, we have three. The first one was about the areas that were criminalized under the UN Convention Against Corruption. We have the different types of criminal offenses that are acknowledged as corruption. Then we have second dimension that was about preventive measures, and we had many indicators there. The ones of the public hiring based on merit, public procurement, public finances. We have the election, the indicators connected to electoral procedures. Then we have preventive measures for the private sector, for state-owned companies, and then finally the training programs. So we finished with those two, and today we're going to review all the indicators under the third dimension, which is enabling environment to report and address corruption. So we have three topics under this area, and we can go to the next slide. The first, oh, you are having questions. Then, yeah, I think we're facing the issues that we faced last time. Can we go to back to the previous one before we jump into the questions, maybe? Previous slide, please, so we don't distract ourselves with the questions. Thank you. So just to say very quickly, first of all, the first topic here is about the institutions that are in charge of fighting corruption, preventing corruption. We will look at indicators that are created to quantify if there is an institution in charge of fighting and preventing corruption, if this institution is well equipped, if this institution has financial resources, if it has human resources that are trained and ready and have the technology available to investigate and fight corruption. Then this is about the institution. Then we would have a second area that has to do with transparency and access to information. And then the third topic today, it's about protecting persons that report corruption. And this is commonly known as whistleblowers. Even though the convention does not include this specific term as such, whistleblowers, this is how everybody knows these persons that are willing to report corruption. So these are the three topics that we will review today. And I think we can move on to the questions that are a recap from the previous session. So over to you, Asad.
Yes, last time we spoke about measuring the efficiency of the electoral processes. Please indicate in the chat box, in your opinion, which of the following is a valid method for measuring integrity in business sector? Annual independent audits of financial operations and compliance programs, or B, tracking social media followers to assess the public trust, and third, relying on profits as the sole indicator of the ethical practices. Please note down in the chat box. What is the right answer, in your opinion? I can see two answers. Three. Almost, I guess everyone selected A. I guess this was a very simple question. The majority voted for A, and this is right. Annual independent audit is one of the key elements to ensure reliability of information, accountability, and integrity. Next question. Which of the following indicators is most appropriate for assessing the integrity of the state-owned enterprises? A, number of SOEs that have the highest profits in their sector. B, percentage of SOEs that regularly publish audited financial statements and comply with transparency requirements. And C, frequency of the SOE leadership changes. Once again, what is the best way to assess integrity at the state-owned enterprise? A, number of SOEs that have the highest profits in their sector. B, percentage of SOEs that regularly publish audited financial statements. And C, frequency of SOEs leadership changes. Let's think that everyone responded, and the obvious answer here is option B. This is the number of SOEs that regularly publish audited financial statements. And one more question. What is the most efficient way to monitor the uptake of the anti-corruption training courses in the public sector? A, offering voluntary online resources without registration of participation. B, assuming that all public servants are aware of the anti-corruption policies without formal training. And C, tracking and reporting the proportion of public servants who have completed certified anti-corruption training programs. Thank you for your quick answers. I guess everything is quite obvious here. The right answer is C. We're very happy to witness that you are doing quite good in terms of the previous topics. You have understood the key elements. We can move further to our topic. Over to you, Salome.
Yes, thank you very much, Asad. I'm happy to see that all participants, or the ones that provided their answers, answered correctly, because today, when we finish the session, before we finish the session, we will be asking all the participants to take a final assessment, so we can send a certificate because of the attendance to all these series of webinars. And I mean, the assessment is quite easy, but basically reviews goes back to the first topic, and I don't remember how many questions we included, but looking at the way they're answering these questions, everybody is going to be able to answer this assessment very quickly. And of course, we would be grateful if all of you can answer the assessment in today, or maximum in a week time, so we can send you your certificates. But thank you for that. And with this, we can start with the first topic. We can move on to the next slide already, please. So to have an overview of all the indicators under this section C.1. So this is the resources allocated to fight corruption. We have 4 indicators here, only 4 indicators. The first one has to do with the funds that are allocated to the agency in charge of fighting corruption. Then we have the 2 indicators on the legal framework that we know as the JURA indicators, that are about the characteristics of this specialized agency to fight corruption. And then we will have finally a de facto indicator that is to see to what extent the anti-corruption agency has enough staff to fight corruption. So very simple today. We can already move to the first indicator, that is the amount of resources allocated to the anti-corruption body. And this basically is to see the level of commitment that a government has in fighting corruption in terms of not only the political commitment, but the financial investment that the government is actually making into fighting corruption. So this is to assess the percentage of the annual budget allocated to fight corruption. And this is strong signal beyond how good a country looks like in an international ranking, beyond many speeches that are talking about fighting corruption. When we see the amount of budget allocated to fight corruption over time, then we can see this commitment to fight corruption. So there is a benchmark, as you can see from the slide. We can say that the minimum resource allocation should be between 0.1% and 0.3% of the country's total annual budget. So this is how some countries, and I will show you in the next slide, some examples of this commitment. No, we don't need to move to the next slide yet. The way we measure this first indicator is by looking at the annual budget for the anti-corruption body or bodies divided by the total budget multiplied for 100. So that way we get the proportion of budget allocated. Of course, to be able to compute this indicator, we need availability of information, the budgetary information available. And in many cases, this is not possible because not everybody has published their actual budget in detail. But this is the first indicator. I think we have two more that are the indicators, the Euro indicators. Asad, do you want to take these two? Okay, over.
Okay. Let's talk about the Euro indicators. Here we need to assess the legislation with regards to the availability of the anti-corruption bodies, whether they have enough of independence. This is a very broad topic, I should say, and we will be guided by Article 6, which requires the definition or establishment of the body or a group of bodies which are in charge of the anti-corruption policies and relevant measures according to this paragraph A of Article 5, which speaks about definition of the anti-corruption policy and the need to ensure its efficiency. So this agency should be in charge of the implementation of such measures. Another element is the supervision and coordination of the policy implementation. This is also a crucial element because without the coordination, we understand that it's not possible to get some serious results. And also knowledge dissemination on the issues related to the prevention of corruption. Paragraph 2 of Article 6 requires the anti-corruption agencies to be independent, what ensures non-interruption of any influence on the anti-corruption agency. So the agency would have enough of the resources and the specialized personnel, the staff, and also the system to train staff. Another important element which we need to consider is that convention does not demand to establish a devoted or dedicated agency. It may be enough, given the variety of functions we discussed previously, that these functions would be assigned to the already existing institutions. The countries, they choose their own ways, but in majority of cases, we see that the specialized dedicated body is being established. So the key elements we need to speak about when we do the assessment, elements related to the independence, defining the specific scope of work, especially in prevention, because the powers, they could be determined in a very broad, vague way, and it would not be clear for the agency what the actual measures which could be taken. So we need to have clear, specific, concrete functions and legal interests, and also the opportunity to be able to perform these functions and to have adequate resources for that. In the modern world, we can look at the following. Are there any obligations to use the IT tools? Because in some of the countries, the focus would be on the IT technologies, but this depends on the way the work of the specific body is arranged in a specific country, and depending on the powers which were provided to this agency. So there are no very specific requirements or elements which are mandatory in terms of consideration. Actually, no, they are, but maybe they are not described in the detail, or the sequence is very different. But the key here is being independent and having something what ensures the efficiency of the performance of such agencies. This is about the de jure. Over to you, Salome.
Thank you, Asad. We can go to the last indicator under this topic of the institutions that are in charge of fighting corruption. And the last indicator is about the human resources. So this is to understand whether or not all positions available in the anti-corruption specialized body are occupied. And it's not only about having 100% occupation of all the organizational structure, but it's also about having an efficient recruitment of specialized staff. Although this indicator is limited to see if all the positions are occupied, of course, the whole idea of having good recruitment processes is also about making sure that the people that is working in this specialized body is recruited based on merit, and that also that they have an appropriate training to actually take care of the different activities, even if these are more focusing into prevention, including the training, but of course, more importantly, regarding investigation, if these procedures and this mandate is under this specialized agency. So the indicator is pretty simple. So it's just to measure the percentage of field position in this body. And we get this indicator by dividing the total number of field positions. The total number of, actually, there's a mistake there. The total number of vacant positions divided by the total number of positions multiplied by 100%. And we can only get this indicator if the information is publicly available. Now, I want to show you some examples. We can go to the next slide, please. These are examples from two countries. We have Singapore and Georgia in this case. In here, I included a combination of what the information that we could find from these agencies. So in the case of Singapore, this information comes from the Corrupt Practices Investigations Bureau. And in here, you can see very clearly the percentage of the annual budget that is allocated to this body. It's $150 million US, and most of these, of course, it's to cover all the expenses, but they have a big chunk of this budget dedicated to invest in technology and operations. So mostly about making sure that they have enough capacities to investigate anti-corruption reports. And then they also report that they have 100% staffing. So all the 1,500 positions are fully occupied, and they actually issue that they have competitive salaries to make sure that they attract the best talent available in the country. So very good and solid practice there in Singapore. Then we also have the example of the anti-corruption agency in Georgia. As you can see, they also are under this threshold of the budget share that we mentioned in the first slide. And very interesting that they are doubling the budget allocated to the anti-corruption body to support their accession to the European Union. At least this is the information that we found on the website. And they have 90% of staffing occupied. Also, mentioning that they have a merit-based recruitment and that they also invest a lot in partnerships for training the staff. So these are all the indicators that are about the resources available to the resources allocated to fight corruption. Again, a combination of financial commitment, good legal frameworks, and good human resources dedicated to the fight against corruption. So with this, we finish the first topic. I think we can move on to the next topic, that is about public reporting and access to information. And for this, I wanted to recall the 2030 agenda, because in the 2030 agenda, as you know, we have 17 objectives, 17 goals, let's say. And in goal 16, that you know that is connected to strong institutions, we have target 16.10, that is about ensuring that governments are operating in a transparent fashion. And actually, there is a target that is connected to public access to information and to protect fundamental freedoms. And there is even an indicator that measures to what extent countries are ready to disclose public information. So I don't know to what extent countries in Central Asia are reporting to this indicator, but the indicator really shows which areas should be considered in every country to make sure that there is a culture of good access to information. So this indicator regarding transparency is connected to other indicators and to other targets, like target 16.6, which is about transparent and accountable institution. And of course, the access to information and transparency is very important for fighting corruption and to reduce the levels of bribery, which is an indicator that we have reviewed in these webinars already. In the first webinar, that is the prevalence of bribery, as you know, and well, there is a mention there to illicit financial flows as well, that of course, very difficult to detect, but they're also connected to corruption and actions to tackle it. We can move on to review all the indicators under this topic. So again, the C.2 is public reporting and access to information, following Articles 10 and 13 of the Convention Against Corruption. We have 9 indicators here. We are not going to review all of them, but we wanted to give you an overview of the most important ones. These are about access to information, the existence of a body in charge of access to information, the existence of mechanisms to complain when information is denied, even to appeal when information is continuously being denied. And the way we monitor this is what we're going to review in the next slide. So we can move on to the next slide already. This is about access to information requests. So this is to see the denial rate. So what is the percentage of requests that are denied in a calendar year? And of course, in order to get this indicator, we need to have an institutional architecture to actually get or reach this stage. We need to have the laws, the regulations for access to information. We need to have a body that is in charge of managing access to information, the requests, and again, the complaints and the appeals. And well, if we have all that, then we are able to monitor the number of information requests, and also how many of these ones are denied in a given year. And of course, challenging to get there in terms of capacities. Apart from all these preconditions that I already mentioned, we would need a centralized tracking systems of all these requests and their responses. We need to have a proper taxonomy for the reasons of denying these requests. Of course, we know that in some cases the requests are not granted because of security reasons, because or of the sensitivity of the information, because of confidentiality rules. There are many challenges there, but definitely a good indicator to assess the level of commitment to transparency by governments. We can move on to the next indicator. The next indicator is about risk. And actually, yeah, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but in this topic of public reporting and access to information, we have a very interesting combination of indicators. What I'm trying to say here is that we have indicators that are connected to the government, to the executive branch. This is, for example, the one I mentioned before, access to information. Usually, this access to information is managed by the executive branch of government. But in this indicator C2.2, we have different branch of government in charge of this indicator, let's say. This is the legislative branch, because this is about the existence of summary proceedings in terms of laws. So this is the percentage of laws that were adopted through summary proceeding in relation to the total number of laws adopted in 12 months. So I think for the first time in all the indicators that we have been reviewing in the previous sessions that are contained in the statistical framework, this is the first indicator that actually connects with the legislative branch. Because, of course, fighting corruption is not exclusive to the executive branch, but also to other branches. We have seen other indicators, for example, connected to the judiciary, but this indicator is about the legislative branch. So how many of these laws that are being drafted are adopted bypassing formal procedures, for example, public consultations, committee reviews, or extended readings, and for what reasons? Usually, I mean, this is a red flag, a risk. That's why this indicator is under the dimension of risk indicators. So if we see that there are many laws that are being adopted via summary proceeding, then there is something risky going on there, and that's why it's worth it to have this kind of indicator measured. We have the next indicator, that is indicator, and I think again, this is, I think this is de facto. And yeah, I don't know if you added some de jure indicators there, but let's review this. This is, if you remember the matrix that we have the different types of indicators. This would be under the last column, that are the indicators about response. This is what the government is doing. We call them de facto indicators. And in this case, the indicators is about proactive publication of information, including risk of corruption. This is a binary indicator. There's no math there. This is about what public information is available without any requests. In some countries, there is legislation in place regarding this proactive publication. Good practices are to publish all this information in all departments. So budgetary information, including the annual budget, the spending by department, all procurement records, contracts, especially if they go over, for example, 10,000 US dollars, information available about the travel and hospitality of public officials, information available about decision making, if the agendas of public officials, especially high ranked or top senior officials, is available, if there are minutes of the meetings that they take, information about policies. In some countries, they have regulatory impact assessments available as well. Audit information should be available. Information about the staff, not only the levels, categories, but also about their salaries, their compensation should be available. Information about performance and oversight, performance reviews, evaluation, auditing, internal and external auditing reports, compliance reports, information about public services. This is super important also because it enables citizens and businesses to better interact with the different government's departments. And if rules and procedures are available, then there's more transparency and more clarity. So information about public services should be fully available. And of course, laws and regulations and risk of corruption. So at a minimum, all this information should be published proactively by government. So I don't know if we have the jury indicators here. Asad, we can perhaps go to the next slide. Okay, over.
Yes, we do have them. So we have approached a very important issue from which we wanted to start our morning. So the access to information. It seems to be a technical element, but let's just think, what is the trust of the citizen? What does it mean? First of all, being confident that the country the citizen lives in, the state apparatus, which should take care of the population, actually takes care. How can we assess that, measure it? For example, depending on the regularity of the services available, mechanisms used, and a very important element here we need to pay attention to, especially in the field of information exchange and ensuring openness, is how regular and on time the data is published. Is the published data, does the published data respond to the needs of the population? To make sure that the system works adequately, because if we look at the corruption, for example, when we speak about the amount of the stolen funds, of course, this will bring to the non-satisfaction of the population, but the regular people, the regular citizens, for them, it's very important to be able to understand that the system is not working properly. For example, a corrupted system, when the law enforcement agencies, instead of protecting the population, actually makes their life more difficult. And each police officer would be perceived as the state, each representative of the local government. And if they do not perform their functions properly, then the questions would be raised, and the citizens, they do not have answers to these questions. And then there is another issue. This subjective experience of a specific citizen would be observed across the entire country. And to be able to answer to this question, there should be the specific system which ensures the accountability and the access to information. So, are there procedures to disclose information? Is it a system or just a declaration in a certain law or in the instructions for the ministries and agencies, and it's not actually performed? So, do people follow these rules and procedures? Are they enthusiastic about that or not? And another element, the informational systems, the procedures here, we need to understand that we need to train people working with the public, and they should know how to respond to the requests or inquiries. And of course, we need to understand the perception of the regular citizens. By pointing out everything what was mentioned above, we need to understand how the legal system is regulated, how the information is disclosed. So the basic legal elements, for example, is there a law or constitution which provides for the right to get access to information? Or is there any specific requirement which shows the standards on the information to be disclosed, especially the information about the activities of the governmental authorities? Are there procedures which ensure the access of people to information? For example, the law may state that every citizen is entitled to get access to information, to request information, but there is nothing what would make it binding for the public authorities to actually share the information upon the request of the citizen. And what do we have in this case? The citizens, they have the right to get information, but systematically this right is not ensured. So we need to speak about procedures in such context, when the right of the citizens becomes the obligation of the public authority, which should share this information. Is there a mechanism to hold those who did not perform their functions properly liable according to the law? At the level of agency, they should be transformed into the accountability of the staff unit with the administrative measures to be taken against this civil servant. So this is the scheme. And of course, the procedures, they are crucial in terms, so we need to understand, are they convenient? There could be procedures according to which information is provided at the request in 30 days, but they use just the templates, and for any kind of information, they say that there are 30 days to provide answer. But there are issues which will take only 5 minutes, let's say, to provide the response. So we need to be adequate. And any uncertainty in terms of providing information, sharing information, could be interpreted as the personal vested interest. For example, information about the vacant premises, which could be leased to the entrepreneurs, business people within the program to support small business, for example. So this is the general information. Speaking about the public accountability, it's a bit simpler. We need to provide information about the way the institutions, public governments are operating, what are the funds allocated to them, what expenses, costs they had. And another element which underpins the right to get information, the mechanism to file complaints in case of the refusal to provide information. And this is the mechanism which regulates the following. For example, the citizen asked for the information but did not get it. But this was related to the fact that the government authority did not publish information about their activities during the year, or there is no audited financial statement, for example, published. And here we think about the obligations of the public authorities. Should they publish, disclose information? Is it mandatory? Is there anything in a system for the public authorities to go through the audits? For example, joint stock company, they should do the audits every year and then publish information. But GC, they do not always have the governmental share, but still it's mandatory for them. Why don't we have the same for the public authorities? So, having this in mind, we could consider the legal component of the system to provide access to information to the public, the freedom to get this access, and mechanisms to file complaints or to inform about some gaps or problems, challenges in inquiring information. This is it about the de jure. Next indicators, over to you, Solomon.
Salome, we cannot hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying that before going to examples, I would like to go back to that slide with all the indicators. I want to just have a very quick recap. The previous one, this one. Yes, I think it's worth having a final reading of this because I want you to appreciate how this topic of public reporting and access to information is including different sectors that should be engaged in promoting access to information and encouraging public reporting. So we already saw indicator C.2.1 that is about access to information, the requests, how many of them are denied, usually under the executive branch. It depends. In some countries, it includes all the branches or the levels of governments. Great indicator, but usually the executive branch is in charge of that. Then we don't have any indicators in relation to perception or under perception, but we have two indicators that are risk indicators under opportunities that we understand as the circumstances that may enable corruption. We already discussed the existence of summary proceedings. So this is about laws that are adopted bypassing all the formalities that should be followed to properly discuss and review and have everybody engage during the consultation process. So this is connected to the legislative branch. Then we didn't review this indicator C.2.3, but this is about how many requests of access of information are exempted and what are the categories for having those exemptions. We're not going to review it here, but just to tell you that's there and that's connected to the rules that institutions should follow in relation to access to information and what information is exempted from these formalities of sharing the information. But then we didn't really look at the indicators on their constraints, which is the second category on the risk indicators. And I want to very quickly stop for one minute there, because the first indicator there is the existence of a regulatory body responsible for addressing complaints regarding access to information. That's usually under, ideally, an autonomous body in charge of access to information, maybe most likely in charge of the executive branch. But then there are two other indicators that are interesting to see. C.2.5 is about the engagement of civil society. And the indicator is number of activities by civil society organizations regarding prevention and tackling corruption. I have to say that this indicator was discussed very intensely. Not all the countries wanted to include this indicator as part of the statistical framework, but I also want to bring this indicator to your attention because, again, we are including in the statistical framework actions, in this case by civil society, which is a very important player in promoting a culture of integrity and transparency. So yeah, it's again as a suggestion, but very important to see and to have the opportunity to reflect how other actors in the society are contributing to a culture of transparency and accountability. So a very good indicator that countries can actually use to show their commitment to promote this culture. Then there is indicator C.2.6 that is about media. So this is number of media reports regarding potential corruption cases. And this is also very interesting indicator to monitor because it shows to what extent the media it's free to conduct investigative journalism and to actually expose openly potential corruption cases. We have seen in many geographies how investigative journalism plays a big role in uncovering huge corruption schemes. So this is key indicator also to promote good levels of public reporting and accountability. Then we already review the de jure indicators that are connected to regulation, as I discussed them extensively. And then finally, we have the proactive publication of information. So in this, I just want to close this topic by saying that public reporting and access to information is a topic that is very prominent in this statistical framework, especially because it's connected to different branches of government and with also other stakeholders in the society. And it's good to be able to show how everybody is working together to make sure that government is accountable and transparent. So now with this, I want to go to the slide with the examples very quickly. We have two examples there from Latin America. One is from Argentina, the other one is from Mexico. So just to show you some figures, for example, in Argentina, 22% of requests resulted in the institution sharing the information that was requested. This is for 2022. So 40% of the requests were not answered, 4% were not processed, and 1% was rejected. But it's good to see that they keep track of the actual access of information requests that they get, and they're able to publicly share what they're doing with these information requests. Then we have the case of Mexico. Actually, this information is a bit old. This is no longer the case. This was under the National Institute of Access to Information, which was an autonomous body, and under their activities, they were always very open to share the information. So only 2% of the information requests that they received in a calendar year, which was 2022, were denied. 95% of the requests were resolved within the legal time limits, which are not very short, I have to say, but it's good to see that they were complying with the time frame allowed for the institutions to answer. And more than 75% of the appeals were resolved in favor of the person that was requesting the information. So very interesting culture of transparency and accountability in those countries in Latin America. Now we can move on to the last topic of this dimension on the whole statistical framework. And this is about reporting and protection of reporting persons or whistleblower. This is to monitor if there are mechanisms in place for persons to report corrupted practices, ideally in the public sector, but also in the private sector and also in state-owned companies. As I was mentioning before, we call them whistleblowers, and they definitely play a very important role in exposing corruption and in promoting public trust and the rule of law in all the countries. So it's one very important aspect of fighting corruption to have the proper mechanisms in place. We wanted to include the definition of whistleblower. I think this is in the next slide. So a whistleblower or a reporting person is this person, either an employee from public institution or private institution, a contractor, a worker, even a consultant, I mean, or even an intern. Actually, all these mechanisms should be inclusive. So anyone that is willing to disclose information related to a wrongdoing, corruption, fraud, or risk hazardous activity within an organization. And with this disclosure, this person is willing to expose any conduct that it's threatening the public good or the public interest. And whistleblowers should be safe enough to report this conduct. And for that reason, we need full institutional architecture in place to make sure that there are reporting mechanisms with the proper safeguards, with making sure that whistleblowers or reporting persons are keep anonymous and confidential, and that there is actually a mechanism in place to actually conduct an investigation without the person being afraid of retaliation. So this is reporting and protection of reporting persons. We can go to the actual indicators. We have 7 indicators in the next slide. We can go to the next slide to have an overview. Yeah, 7 indicators. So whistleblower reporting, number of proceedings that are open due to whistleblower reporting. Then we have another indicator connected to perception. This is the proportion of public officials who would not report for fear of retaliation. For this, we would need a survey. Again, not many countries have surveys within the public sector, but a good indicator to see the level of trust in the system for reporting. Then we have indicator connected to constraints, so the existence of internal or external reporting channels to facilitate the reporting. Then we have the de jure indicator, and then we have 3 de facto indicators connected to the numbers of reports that are received, the numbers of reports that are addressed, and the number of whistleblowers that are under protection safeguards. We can go to the first slide, to the first indicator, that is whistleblower reporting. So this is the number of proceedings that were open due to person reporting. Ideally, as was suggested by member states and by NGOs. So I have to say that during the consultation process of the statistical framework, we have a number of NGOs in different geographies sharing with us a list of 30 indicators connected to this specific area. There are many things that can be measured in connection to whistleblowers, but we only selected a few, the ones that were supported by most institutions in many regions. So we kept this one, and this is the number of proceedings that were open due to whistleblower reporting. That it's an indicator that is relatively easy to track, but what is hard to attribute is which number of proceedings were open because of this. I mean, this is not always possible to disclose. because of the actual confidentiality that these kind of mechanisms required. But good to see if we are actually using these reports to start investigations and to actually initiate a proceeding. So we can move on to the next indicators, that is about the existence of internal and external reporting challenge. And this is a binary indicator just to see whether or not the actual mechanism is in place. But of course, we should not limit ourselves to reporting that the mechanism exists, but we should actually see the quality and the characteristics of these reporting channels. First of all, we should be able to have different types of channels. Now with technology, we can have hotlines, we can have websites that are safe. We can have dedicated email addresses that are, again, anonymous or open. It depends. I mean, we can have the two. In some places, they have in-person channels. I mean, there is a person responsible to receive this information. Channels should be open but confidential or anonymous. But the most important issue here is the identity of the person that is reporting should be protected. And yeah, the policies and the mechanisms should be clear enough, should be open enough. Everybody should be aware about the fact that these mechanisms exist and what is the actual treatment of the information that is going to be reported. And of course, another very important issue is to make sure that all the reporting persons have the assurance that there would not be a retaliation because the mechanisms are protecting them and their identity. So yeah, with this, I think we can move on to the de jure indicators. So for that, over to you, Asad.
Thank you, Salome. The entire system with regards to the protection of the whistleblowers is an important element which allows the public sector to use the internal resources for the uninterrupted improvement from one hand, and to maintain the work at the proper level. As I mentioned previously already, one of the negative impacts of the corruption is that system does not work in a way it should, as it was planned, for example, and it's clear that the reason for that is the way officials perform their functions. So behind every problem, there is a certain name, title, position. Another important element we need to think about, why do we need to protect the whistleblowers? For example, we need to distinguish between those who file a complaint or informs. These are the people who are beyond the institution, and whistleblowers, they are inside, they know all of the schemes, the processes, and this is a very important source of information to reveal systemic corruption, because we understand that systemic corruption, this is something which shapes the corruption, flows from the bottom to the top. Without understanding the linkages between people at various positions, we will not be able to reveal this corruption network. And here we need to remember that corruption system works following the principles of the organized criminal group. And we understand how complex, dangerous it becomes to inform about systemic corruption in the institution where you work. People even could be threatened, and it could be dangerous for their life. One of the airplane producers the company, the planes of this companies, they had a lot of crashes lately, and the person who disclosed information with the negative facts, which describe the way the spare parts are supplied, the supply chains, the quality, which actually brings to the problems in the system. He actually committed suicide after disclosing this information. So always it is associated with the money, big money, and risks to life. If we speak about the journalist, for example, we have the legislation which protects their activities. Witnesses, for example, for them, there is another witness protection system. But when we face the whistleblowers, it's very difficult. What is available there? What should be used? Because not always there is a need to follow the witness protection program to do something similar. Not very often. The person is dismissed or deprived of the salary, some social implications. So this is done in response to the fact that the whistleblower informed about the gaps or problems or challenges. And not always we can say that this is a case of the criminal law, because employer can say that the employee did not work efficiently, the performance was bad, that's why we, for example, dismissed the person. So when working with the whistleblowers, we need to understand that certain actions could be taken by the employers against their employees. And given the entire set of the questions, we think about the way we measure the system, assess the system to protect whistleblowers. Is there a specific definition to whistleblowers? What categories of persons are included there? Does it cover only the staff? Or, for example, if the relatives of the employees share the information, are they subject to protection in this case? So, imagine a person informed about a certain case. Does the mechanism to protect the whistleblower turn on automatically, or there should be something which should be done to trigger the protection of whistleblowers? So there should be maybe certain procedures we need to go through. But something could happen within this period of time within which certain actions are being taken. Is this an anonymous and confidential procedure? One thing, for example, when you indicate in the law that everything should be confidential, another thing when the procedure actually guarantees confidentiality. And of course, we need to understand that you cannot only declare that the mechanisms are there, there should be procedures. This may include different elements. For example, we can observe the further life of the whistleblower. Were certain actions taken against the whistleblower but on the part of the employer or not, for example? And this shows the way your organization is run. For example, is there a compliance service or any hotline service, for example? And the interaction with the external institutions, for example, the bodies of the interior, anti-corruption agencies, how do they work with the whistleblowers? Taking into account all of these elements will allow you to have the general understanding of the potential legal framework, whether it protects the whistleblowers and all of the legal guarantees which were promised, they are provided for as a mandatory public service. And to be confident that the system is actually working as it was planned, you need to have the regular assessment whether it is in compliance with the standards applicable globally. Greco, OECD, other international organizations, for example, they may have their own standards to evaluate the system to protect the whistleblowers. This is it about the 3-4 indicator. Over.
Thank you, Asad. We can move on to the last 3 indicators. We included all of the 3 in the same slide. These are very simple indicators. So how many reports were received by appropriate units? How many of these reports were actually addressed? Which means how many moved forward in the procedure or of investigation, or were discarded, and the number of whistleblowers that have received protection from these units. So the whole point of these 3 indicators is to measure to what extent the persons are engaging with the mechanisms, have enough safeguards to trust that our report will be addressed, will be investigated, and that this person will be safe and would not have any fear of retaliation. So with these indicators, we're just basically trying to quantify if the systems that are in place are responsive, are effective, and if they are actually properly designed, so any person can actually report any wrongdoing or threat in terms of corruption. So these are all the indicators in the framework. Just to wrap up this topic of whistleblowers or reporting persons, an example of how we can read all these indicators in a holistic way. We can move on to the next slide. In all the framework, you see, we review all these topics, and we've been repeating that ideally these indicators should be analyzed or interpreted in a holistic way, because if we see them in isolation, it's again by just like looking at the ranking of perception of corruption. It's great to see this indicator. It's nice to see how we are improving in our rankings, but we are really not understanding the complexity of what is happening, what is improving, what is getting worse. So just like with all the other topics, we need to be able to read all these indicators in a holistic way. So for example, in here, we see the combination. In the first one, we see if reporting channels exist, which is indicator 3.3.3, but the mechanisms for reporting persons are weak, which is the other indicator, then this means that the people are not going to report because they have a fear of retaliation, but the persons that perhaps would be exposed if these persons report. So again, we need to look at these 2 figures together. We have another example there. If there are mechanisms in place that receive a high number of reports, but only a few proceedings are open, and only few of these reports are addressed, then maybe the system is there, but it's not really acting. Maybe it's understaffed. Maybe the procedures are not clear. Or maybe it's only about bureaucracy. Maybe there's not really a willingness to receive reports and actually act based on this. So yeah, finally, I think there is the issue of perception. Maybe if the proportion of officials that would not report for fear of retaliation is low, but the number of proceedings and the number of whistleblowers that have received protections are high, maybe we can see that the system is actually working. So if officials are not afraid of reporting, and we actually see that there are many proceedings being open, and there are many people that are under protection, then we see that the system is actually working. So how does these indicators look like in practice? We have two examples. We have Canada and Ghana, so two very different regions. We can go to the next slide. Canada is showing us that different types of reporting channels are in place. Internal at the agency level, external, there is a specialized commissioner to receive external requests, and there are public channels for the media, and all of them have enough legal protections in place. We have that the national agency reports that 90% of the reports are addressed within 30 days by the federal agencies. Then we have Ghana that have been working a lot on surveys, perception and experience of corruption. And actually, they just published a new report last week. And in this case, they included public officials. So in 2023 survey, they report that 60% of public officials do not want to report corruption because they fear retaliation. Then we see that legal mechanisms exist, but enforcement is weak. Only 12% of retaliation cases. So that's connected to the previous indicator that is showing us that the officials actually have fear, because we see that retaliation is occurring, and in here they're reporting that 12% of the retaliation cases are prosecuted. So this is how indicators look like in practice. Now, I just want to finish this topic of reporting and protection of reporting persons, advertising UNODC tools. Next slide, please. UNODC has been working a lot on this area. We have many guides to review good practices of protection of reporting in persons. On the left-hand side, we had a publication from 2015, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately, this is not available in English. In Russian. There are some languages available, but it's not available in Russian, but it's there. And of course, now with technology, we can translate anything very quickly. So this is a very good and solid resource guide on the good practices in this area. On the right-hand side, we have very interesting guide. This is available in Russian. If you use the QR code, you can download the Russian version. And this is protection of reporting persons within sports. This is actually a fairly new publication, and it was published together with the International Olympic Committee, because as you know, UNODC has been working very closely with this committee to safeguard and to actually prevent and address corruption within the sports sector. We have two more. The next slide, please. So we have on the left-hand side a training. This is an e-learning available for you. Again, I'm sorry it's not available in Russian at the moment, but our e-learning colleagues in Vienna are working very hardly to have more courses available in all UN languages. So maybe this would be available in Russian in the future, but this is basically to learn more about whistleblower protection. You can sign up in this short e-learning course using the QR code. And then finally, we have the same guidelines to enable whistleblower protection, but within the healthcare sector. So very good resources are available in this area. And with this, Asad, over to you. Maybe we can wrap up here by showing the QR code for the assessment. I think we're going to share it in the chat, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think Gulnar will share it. And I see that there has been questions in the chat, and over to you for maybe discussing them and wrap up all these amazing 7 series of webinars. I just want to thank you and all the team, Safar and Gulnar, that have been working very hard. to put this information together every Friday. With this, we finished the 7 training courses, and I'm very happy to finalize the 7 webinars, because after these, we will disseminate this series to the other regions in the world that have been asking us to prepare materials to further disseminate the statistical framework, to raise awareness about the need to be more serious about measuring corruption. And I've been repeating, we are not asking from countries to measure all these indicators. It's really very ambitious framework. We have many indicators, but the whole point of these webinars and of this statistical framework is to have serious conversations beyond the measurement of perception on corruption. We have seen that we have many possibilities to prioritize specific areas of interest and to show the willingness and the commitment in every country to show progress, to show engagement, to show investment. And we hope that after this series of webinars, we can work together with the national specialized anti-corruption bodies to perhaps improve the collection and dissemination of information regarding corruption, areas that are criminalized as corruption, to show more their preventive measures, and also to show their willingness to enable the environment to report and address corruption and to be more transparent and accountable. So looking forward to engage with countries on the measurement of corruption in the future. Over to you, and thank you very much to the interpreter, because she has been really fantastic. Natasha, thank you really for your support over these 7 webinars. Over to you, Asad.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Salama. Indeed, time flies. We've spent 8 Fridays. I guess it took 3 months of our life, but it was a very interesting experience. We are thankful to everyone who participated, who went with us through the process from the very beginning till the end, and we appreciate your attention and participation. This methodology is quite ambitious, that's true, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to include all of the elements. Actually, everything what is provided for in the framework already exists or in place in many countries to some extent. For example, we have at the agency level the mechanisms to report about different things, and surveys are being organized in different countries, and you can copy some information, some indicators from the service, for example, if they are similar to the statistical framework. So it's manageable, and there is nothing impossible to all of us. With some time, this system may be successfully introduced. We just need to have a strategy for that, for example, to include all of the elements. As promised, we will run the questionnaire. I think Gulnar have posted the link. She shared the link in the chat box. If I'm not mistaken, we were supposed to have the QR code available, but when it's copied and the link is sent to the chat box, I think it doesn't work. But the link is okay. I've just checked it. You can take this survey, provide answers to the questions, and if you are successful, you will be issued a certificate. And you may be proud of the certificate because it is a demonstration that you have learned all of the materials. And this will make our webinars different from others, because we are not giving you certificates just for your participation or attendance, but we actually assess your acquired knowledge. In future, we hope that this will become a more standardized online course, which will last more than 12 hours. It will require some serious work. So, colleagues, this is not the last webinar in general. We are planning to organize some more webinars. Let's keep in touch because we will have a series of webinars related to the asset recovery. So please follow us on various pages. We will send notification from via the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the schedule for the asset recovery webinars. We will engage not only the public or governmental agency staff, but representatives of various organizations as well. So everyone would be able to share the experiences with the asset recovery representing various regions. And we will try to select the time which will be more convenient for people from various parts of the world to join. So we will send the information and we will try to arrange these webinars regularly, but of course we need to understand that in any situation we may not always be able to keep up with the schedule, so there could be some changes, but general information will be provided and we will always post the updates in the social media, and you can invite not only the colleagues you are currently working with within the certain institution, but also any stakeholders who might be interested in this topic. It of course depends on the country, and I think it is quite useful for our region as well to understand how to detect, trace the stolen assets, how to recover them, especially, for example, with regards to the cryptocurrencies. This is a very promising topic, and we need to engage the private sector as well. So we will do our best to make everything as convenient to you as possible. Before we finalize the webinar, I would suggest everyone to turn on the cameras so we would take the general picture, family picture. And then it will be not a final goodbye, but we will just say that we will see each other soon, hopefully. So colleagues, Gulnar, as you've asked, everyone turned on the cameras. Please let us know when.
But maybe I think you are on the spotlight. I think we need to take you off the spotlight so we can see everybody in the same screen.
Now everyone is on the general screen. So if you turn on the cameras, we would appreciate it to have the group photo.
I still see someone in spotlight. Speaking. Maybe everybody turn their microphones on. No, it's like one by one. We need to, I don't know how to change the.
Also, a small announcement. Many colleagues, they were not able to join today, but they participated in previous webinars. If you send their emails, the contact details, we will be more than happy to include them into the final assessment and to provide certificates. So please let them know that they could share the email addresses to me or Zafar, and we will include you in the emailing list. Include them as well.
I still don't see everybody. I changed it. I don't know if you're seeing it as a gallery now. Okay.
Confirming the screenshot is there. Everyone is on the picture. That's great. Thank you. Colleagues, we were very happy to see you. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.